You know, when I was setting this all up, not one single car passed by. Turn the camera on and here we go again. Busy Sunday. Good morning, and thanks for joining me back here in Oval Window Garage with Oval Window Racing. I'm Clinton, and this is my garage. Today, I'm starting a film series. I don't know how long this is going to take me, so you'll probably see me wearing a couple different shirts and maybe have a couple different hairstyles throughout this build, but I'm going to be working here on this brand new empty Kingpin beam here, built in Brazil. The reason I'm going to go start with a new one, but if you've been following Hubert here, his front beam has already been cut up and hacked, and someone put a different style adjuster in it, and that's why I'm starting from scratch. I'm going to be putting my set of shock towers on it. We're planning this to narrow it 3 inches with adjusters. If we set it up like my other car, the 56 Beetle, Simon, we'll also have like 2.5 inch drop spindles on it. And you generally, when I set up the adjusters, I set them up in the neutral spot so you can go up or down. Since I'm running the lower spindles, there's no reason to continue going even lower because Simon does set pretty low. I can't take credit for this style shock tower. Something that I bought years ago from Brad Purser over in Vancouver, British Columbia. I met him years ago, and he was an excellent fabricator and came up with this idea. Well, since I can't get these from Brad anymore, I decided to kind of carbon copy them and try and make them myself. Well, not exactly myself. I got help from the Weapons Collective Edge over there, my friend Doug, and I'm taking advantage of him having a plasma CNC cutter so he can cut all the pieces out. And I'll probably get a hold of another friend that'll eventually TIG weld them all together, since I'm not a welder, I'm a grinder. And I don't have a TIG welder yet. It's something I've been planning to get sometime in the near future. And I've been saying that for 20 years now. The time, nothing's better than the present, right? But I'll give you a closer look here at these things. This here is the custom shock tower. This is just a template, kind of made out of some crappy steel, just so when I do get the original pieces, I can give them to the welder. He'll know how they go. They're not completed yet. I don't have the tops done yet. I'll show you those when I get that done, but basically, that's kind of semi what they're going to look like. This is the Brazilian built beam. It's brand new. Comes with the bushings in the side, which need to be cleaned up. It's been sitting around for a little bit. And this is the other side of the shock tower. Another look at it. Basically, what we're going to wind up doing is cutting this top part off. And then this, which I got these on the wrong side, and then these will basically weld on to the top, and they'll cap off the part that you already cut off. Now, the neat thing about the shock towers are actually taking modified ball joint shock, not a Kingpin shock. And that kind of opens up, I think, a better selection of shocks for drag racing. I can't remember the year, and I was running them there for a while, but basically the same shock that an early dart would take would fit on here too. Basically, they make a nice 90-10 shock for the darts, which are going to fit on this. I haven't ran them in a while. I'm basically running just a stock oil-filled shock on the front of my car, Simon, and that's probably what we're going to do on the front of Hubert here too, if I'm successful at building this beam. I've done it a couple of times, but it's been a few years. But yeah, follow along, and I hope I can bring this to you. I got to throw out the disclaimer there. This is not a how-to build, but this is a how I did it build. Yeah, cut and weld at your own safety. You know, we are dealing with front-end suspension parts here, and you know, a lot can go wrong if you don't do it right. Well, here are the adjusters I've decided to use. They're the same style adjuster that I used in my original builds, but they are now a nice empty product. And I also chose to purchase brand new grub screws and lock nuts. Yeah, Hubert's front beam is pretty rusty. It's been sitting outside for years, 20 years that I know of, and then I don't know where it sat when the previous owner owned it, and it's seen better days. So I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get the grub screws out safely. I'm hoping that the torsion springs are still good. I'm sure they are. You know, you can see he's still sitting up nice and even. Yeah, one of the processes is going to be trimming those down, you know, 1.5 inches on each side, because we're narrowing the beam a full 3 inches. That's where you got to measure 3, maybe 4 times and drill and cut once. Ask me how I know. Simon's original spring plates are still around here someplace, and yeah, I didn't quite get them right, so I had to go out and purchase another set and try again. But yeah, he's been running around on those the last 18 or 20 years, and yeah, so far they seem to be good. Stay tuned, and next step is probably going to be cutting and welding. All right, we're at the point here where we're finishing up the shock towers, and I've got both of these mocked up. And just a reminder, these here are just sample pieces. They're a model for the welder. When I actually have the original pieces built, we determined that this sheet metal is kind of thin, and I think we decided to go with a 14 gauge, somewhere around 80 thousandths of an inch. I believe that's where we're at. Now, what today's project's going to be is these upper shock tower mounts. Now these are, give me a closer look here. These are a piece that I had my buddy Doug over at Weapons Collective Edge again. He turned these up. They're threaded on this end, and they're hollow on this end, and I may have them hollow these out a little bit more because they are pretty heavy. What I have to do is mount these. I gotta remember what side. I believe they're gonna go like this. But you can see they don't fit in here exactly well enough. When I had these mocked up, I basically took the set I had and made these little cardboard templates, and this is basically what Doug had to go by for his laser plasma CNC cutter, I believe is what it was. So pieces aren't exactly probably 100%. You know, our job is to kind of fine tune them for when we go make final product that they look a lot better. Like I said, a model. I hope my welder can make them more square than I did. So I'm gonna have to get the old noisy die grinder out and make those fit, and then tack weld them with the welder down here, and I'll show you what I come up with when I'm done here. All right, got that done. It's a good thing I went and looked at my car Simon downstairs. These shock tower tops are supposed to be a little off center there, so everything actually kind of did go together. You know, my fitment's not 100%, but you basically will get the basic idea of what they are supposed to look like. And how the shock is going to work, I think I mentioned earlier that it is a ball joint style shock on a kingpin. We're going to use these Heim joints here with a nice healthy bolt. So with the Heim joint, here's some part numbers here in case you're interested. It's a, hold on, can't see anything. Whoa, you guys are going for a ride. All right, part numbers. This Heim joint is an HF6C, and it comes female thread, which is 3/8 by 24, and I got a nice healthy 3/8 by 24 bolt. So the shock is going to have to be threaded. Actually, we're going to do a little modification on the shock, and it's going to be threaded for this 3/8 by 24. So this Heim joint will screw on the top, and then this bolt, and I kind of wish I had a shoulder bolt, but I couldn't find one. Actually, I think I actually looked on Simon, and I don't think those are shoulder bolts either. But those, give you guys a look, GoPro here, will screw right in here. And now that I'm got these all in hand, probably didn't need to go that long with the bolt. Let's see if it's sticking out. And actually, it doesn't stick all the way out, so yeah, probably the more thread the better. But yeah, that's the basic idea. Shocks, got the old, basically stocker Cofabs. I recommend using an oil-filled shock, not a gas shock on these front of these cars. They're really light on the front, and you start putting a gas shock on there, you know, the ride does get even more uncomfortable than what it's going to be with the lowered front end. Let's take one out of the box here. And these are actually already threaded, but I don't think they're threaded. They look like pretty coarse thread. I'm pretty sure we're going to cut this top off and rethread this down here. And we're coming really close to the next step, and that's to start hacking stuff off on this brand new beam. The scary part. Got the modification on one shock done, and I'll show you the difference here. And in case you guys are wondering, part number on these shocks, this is a Cofab B47533N. And there's some other numbers, 1513 1-D-24. But Cofab does have a different number. Actually, Pacific Parts International has a number here too, and I'll show that to you guys. So here's the difference on the modification. This is the one I cut here and then rethreaded. Like I said, it's 3/8 by 24. This is probably a metric. Probably it's bigger than 8. I think it may be 10 mil by 150 or something. The nice thing about this, the way Brad designed this tower, the shock towers on this beam, is you can still run like a factory style shock instead of having to order those smaller lower shocks. And then, like I said, these screw on here. It's a really slick design. And then they'll go down to the lower control arm. But yeah, it's pretty slick. To kind of show you what I did here, I actually had to go and grind this down smaller so I could, run the tap down it. Resist the die. Either way, I gotta, like I said, thread this, and the factory diameter on the shock here was a little too big for the tap die, whatever that particular piece is, and so I had to grind it down to roughly 350 thousandths to get this thing to get this thing to work. Now, when you guys are cutting these threads, this is a little bit of a tip. Maybe you already know this, maybe you don't, but I've seen so many people just grab a hold of this and just keep turning it on, turning it on, turning it on. You don't want to do it that way. You want to have little turns and then go backwards, a little turn, then go backwards, a little turn and go backwards, and sometimes you may have to go a little more, because what you're doing is you're cutting the the steel when you do those threads, and you actually got to go backwards to actually relieve it. I guess you'd call it the shrapnel, the chippings. You actually want to kind of go backwards and cut them off. That's best what that does when it goes backwards. So it just cleans the tap out, or the die. I don't know which is what. I should actually look that up. Just like that, and always have a little bit of cutting oil with you too. Helps keep your die or tap sharp. All right, we are now to the scary part. Actually starting to cut and modify this front beam. So what we have to do here, well, the first task, cut the shock towers off. And I've already kind of scribed a line here to follow on both sides here. And we're not going to need the bump stop. Bump stop's just going to get in the way, so we'll hack that off too. Now this beam's a little different. I see there's a little nub here. The last couple I've done, there's the last couple, I should say the only two I've done, there was always a little nub here for the steering gearbox, but I don't see that on this particular beam. This is a new beam. And then we will have to cut these off. But before I cut those off, we're going to mount this jig I made years ago and mark them, because they kind of got to go right back in the same spot. And we are going to be taking 3 inches out of here, plus the width of these adjusters out of the top and bottom beam. Well, I did that backwards. Out of the top and the bottom beam. And I'm not 100% sure if we're even going to use, I think this is a bump, not a bump stop, but like a stabilizer. There's like a shock absorber like thing that goes in here for your steering. I've never had it on my 56. I don't know when they started putting them on the cars. Emily's 63 Bug, I believe, does have the hardware for it. So it is possible, or is possible. It's probably, we'll probably retain it in case we want to use it, but we will have to move this 1.5 inches over this way. I know I said taking 3 inches out of here, but that's 1.5 inches on each side. So if you had, you know, your little nub over here, you'd have to move that 1.5 inches over this way, and the same over here. And then, you know, I'm not too worried about it quite yet, but when we get to the tie rods, we have to take 1.5 inches out of each one of those, you know, because there's one on this side and one on that side. 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches makes 3. But yeah, enough blabbing. Let's get to working and start grinding. We'll put the grinder to use here. All right, yeah. Heater decides to turn off, of course, when I start recording, but here's kind of a rough look of what it's going to look like, just to give you guys a good idea. Of course, like I mentioned before, this is just kind of a rough model, so I'm going to have to probably make it fit a little bit better when I do get the correct model. But that's the basic idea what these shock towers are going to look like. I was actually surprised. I don't remember my pump stop being solid. I was kind of cut that apart. Was a little surprised. I think mine, I have to go look again, but I think the ones on my 56 are, you know, the factory ones are actually hollow. This was a solid piece. I'm gonna tell you what, it is pretty heavy. Solid unit all the way through. And I'm just kind of looking to see where shocks are gonna line up. If you look right straight down through there, we're pretty even with the original shock bolt over there, bolt hole. So we should be pretty good to go. On to the other side. All right, got a mess here, but you know, you gotta make a mess before you can make it look good. But yeah, I got both shock towers cut off. I did have to take the steering shock absorber thing off in order to get this to fit in my jig here. See, I got this piece of metal. Actually, it's 2 pieces of it. It's 2 pieces of angle iron welded together. It's what I use to hold the beam in here, so it's held kind of square. Probably should have made it out of something a little heavier, because if you're not careful, it will flex a little bit. But you guys have probably always seen it hanging on the wall here behind me. But I do also have the jig for the mounting brackets here fabbed on here. And then I got these little grooves here. It's where I scribe. I got an L and an R, so I know which side. Probably doesn't matter, but for me, in the OCD, I like to keep them on the same side of the beam. But now that I got this marked, I can go and cut the welds off and remove these from the beam, and then it'll be time for choppity chop. But this is just so that I you know, get these back in the same spot. So, and then I gotta make sure it's centered from corner to corner here, so we don't have an off-center wheel on the car and have the car dog track down the road. But yeah, that's the next scary part. So yeah, stay tuned. All right, that wasn't fun at all. Yeah, that was a bugger. I've never seen a beam with such a good weld on it. I guess that's a good thing to know if you're buying one of these empty beams, that they're welded up pretty good. Normally, you know, when I go to cut these off, like on the stock one, you know, there's a few tacks on them. Well, at least, you know, on the oval window, you know, I've only done 2 before. One, I don't remember if it was the original 59 beam or 58 beam, but Simon's a 56, and yeah, I think I actually put a little more weld on than what the factory did. But yeah, they're over here. I rebolted them back on here. They look really rough. The beam looks really rough, but it won't look like that when I'm done. What I'll do, I didn't really want to cut down this deep into the beam, but what I'll do is I'll weld these back up and smooth them back down, and it should be good as new. But I got to take 5 inches is what I'm figuring. This is the welding adjuster I'm going to be using. These are, like, you know, another fine empty product, 2 inches. And then, like I mentioned before, I need to take 3 inches out of here. So that's a total of 5 inches that I've got to cut out of here. But I'm going to be putting 2 inches back in with this. So I got to do math here. And I'm going to build this just like I did Simon. I'm going to put this adjuster, and there's an adjuster screw on here someplace. I'll have to open one of these up. But the grub screw is going to go right back in the same spot. So I got to draw a line along here that's more than 5 inches straight across here. So I know where my center line is, because I'm going to set this beam up so it'll raise 2 inches or lower 2 inches, and we're going to be running 2-inch drop spindles on Hubert too. So, you know, with the 2 inches down and 2 inches drop spindles, 4 inches is quite a bit. There's no reason to go 6 because I think the car will basically almost drag. You know, Simon's is pretty low too. I actually got to probably raise him up a little bit. But yeah, I got to quit talking and start drawing up some lines on here, and then do the really scary thing, cutting this down in half and then taking 5 inches off of it. Oh, fun. Well, there we have it. That's what it looks like now. Kind of looks like a pile of junk, but hey, when we're done with it, it should look much better. A little tip here, when you're using one of these chop saws, it's always good to have a nice good or semi-fresh blade on it, because you can actually cut both of the tubes at once. It is a slow process. Bleep bloop down in the comment area there if you guys know of a better blade. I'm just using this carbon style blade. It's kind of what saw came with, and it's always what I purchased, but modern technology and newer products, maybe there's something better on the market that will cut a lot faster and maybe a lot cleaner. But I think this is where I'm going to leave off today. Maybe make this a 2-part series. We'll finish up with this here and continue welding in part 2. I got to get the shock towers actually built and welded by somebody that's a little better than I am. Oh, well, maybe a lot better than I am. And what else am I waiting for? Oh, yeah, I got to pull the old beam off of Hubert here. He's sitting there patiently waiting so I can, you know, get the A-arms all cleaned up and mounted in here so I can cut the springs. Torsion springs need to be cut to length and re-drilled for the grommet screws, and I'll do that all in the next video. But yeah, I'll sign off here. Keep cruising, keep shifting those gears, and always enjoy the ride. Let's move on out.